Today I want to take you on a journey, but not some picnic camp rock Boy Scout excursion that you're thinking of. No, today we're looking at a capsaicin journey of pleasure, answering the most important question that is yet to be answered. Where do Genshin Impact characters rank on the Scoville scale? We're talking about pure synthesized, non-contaminated spiciness of visual pleasure. The tier list is pretty simple. I've got most of the characters and a few extra within here. Characters of the highest temperature will be ranked on the top with 27 million degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature of the core of the sun. Carolina Reaper follows next. The Habanero is below that. Lukewarm, aesthetically displeasing, visual myocardial infarction, and Boku no Pico. The Boku no Pico tier will be reserved for all the lollies and the questionably aged characters to avoid any scrutiny. First character up is Noel. In terms of Scoville pungency or spiciness, her capsaicinoid levels are pretty high. Her clavicle is S-shaped and very slender. I estimate it to be approximately 16 centimeters in length. Noel's clavicular head of her sternocleidomastoid muscle is pretty sexy. Not only do you have that, but you also get the sternohyoid muscle, which is very aesthetically pleasing. Because of these features, Noel reminds me of a nice ripe habanero with its heat, flavor, and floral aroma. So I'm gonna go ahead and put her into the habanero tier. Male MC Aether is next, and in terms of humidity, I don't think the concentration of water vapor is really present in this character. He's not totally lacking in capsaicin, but I don't really sense too much heat from him. There's not too much perspiration coming out. The organoleptic properties of this character is pretty disappointing. You really want some senses to be exploding and extruding out of every orifice of your body. Aether really isn't producing like a tingling or numbing visual effect in my eyes. I'd say he's pretty mild. Aether's like a dish that's been slightly unseasoned and been neglected in the kitchen. His hotness is nothing special, so I'm gonna go ahead and put him in the lukewarm tier. Albedo is next, and he suffers the same fate as Aether, but I argue that it goes a little bit more beyond that. The culinary artist that crafted Albedo didn't really season this character really well. My taste buds are quite disappointed. With every 5-star character, you expect to be inseminated by some beautiful hydroxy-alpha Sancho molecules. You really want to be ejaculated with some visual prowess. You want to be bombarded with packs of heat that are schmeedy and visceral. The way a 5-star character looks visually should be very proselytmatic. Albedo's pungency is pretty displeasing and deficient. The lack of capsaicin from Albedo is inadequate for a 5-star character. So I'm gonna go ahead and put Albedo into the aesthetically displeasing tier. Amber provides a quite pleasant organoleptic sensation. The capsaicinoids within this character are very bountiful. I went ahead and conducted a high-performance liquid chromatography in order to separate and identify Amber's hotness. Looking at Amber's results, they are eminently delightful. Another aspect of Amber that I like is her temporalis muscle. It's masculated quite nicely. The way her trapezius muscle stabilizes her body is extremely attractive. Amber overall is pretty exciting. I think that she will definitely be placed into the habanero tier. Ayaka is next, and I don't want to get too in-depth with her because she hasn't been released yet. Trying to numerically quantify Ayaka's Scoville units is quite hard. Nonetheless, based on the leaked footage, Ayaka does seem to have quite a large number of capsaicinoids. The lack of pants really illustrates the pungency of Ayaka. Clearly, only wearing panties is a defense mechanism against the heat that she is able to produce. If she was a pyro character, she would literally blow up the Genshin Impact servers. So to counteract this, they made her a cryo character. Ayaka's zygomaticus major muscle and zygomaticus minor muscle are two features that instantly stood out to me. The small breadcrumbs of pheromones that I can smell through my computer are enough to get me excited when this character drops. Once Ayaka is released, I'll be able to go more in depth into her character, as well as look at her moans, but for now, I'm gonna go ahead and put her in the Carolina Reaper tier. Baizu reminds me of Orochimaru, but a little more tame. Although if MiHoYo added a Sharingan-like character into this game, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy started going apeshit. In terms of visual perception, I think Baizu provides a good amount of visual stimuli. His face seems pretty symmetrical to me, and it might be possible that he's just packing a shit ton of pungency behind that cloak. I'd say that my neuroepithelial cells are efficiently satiated with this character. Baizu is still a mystery, we still need some more information. Maybe do some meta-analysis on his facial structure. But I'm gonna go ahead and put him in the habanero tier. Barbara is next, and her capsaicin levels aren't that good. There is a tiny bit of moistness to her, but the amount of water molecules aren't statistically significant here. I did have some high hopes because her moans are quite excellent, but it looks like her pungency is altogether flawed. She's not a character that really gets my blood pumping in any sort of area. When I see a hot 2D character, my photoreceptor cells really let me know. The rods, cones, and retinal ganglion cells really let me know and start ejaculating neurons to my brain to let me know that I'm looking at something pleasing. But unfortunately, this didn't happen with Barbara. I am a little disappointed with Barbara. I think she has some high hopes with her moans being so excellent, but I'm gonna go ahead and put Barbara into the lukewarm category. Coming immediately after in space, time, and order is Beidou. And boy, is she packing some fucking heat. Beidou's capsaicinoids are discharging all over my face. Her spiciness is titillating my eardrums. As you can see, Beidou must constantly hydrate herself. Beidou's depressor anguli oris muscle is extremely attractive, and her labii inferioris muscle is equally beautiful. The first time I saw Beidou, my photoreceptor cells were jizzing in excitement. Prior to looking at Beidou, I was always struggling with my circadian rhythm. It was out of whack, but I think Beidou's hotness really brought some structure back into my life. I'm gonna put Beidou into the Carolina Reaper tier. Up next is Bennett. His capsaicin levels are pretty low. There aren't many prominent features of muscularity that I can notice. I'm not really receiving any neuronal electrically excitable communication throughout my cells when I look at Bennett. My axons and dendrites are pretty dormant. The scoville scale seems to be pretty untouched. Bennett's phylogeny seems to be largely distant from the genus of capsicum. I really don't see too much hotness coming out of Bennett, so I'm gonna go ahead and put him in the lukewarm tier. Chungyun on the scoville scale is pretty mediocre. I wouldn't exactly call him unseasoned, but he is definitely mild. Cheongyun's spiciness is like a boring archaeological excavation that finds nothing. I really wanted to know if Cheongyun was hot or not, so I decided to perform another high-performance liquid chromatography. Perhaps there was some bias within my analysis. Cheongyun's hotness is very dull. It's not really strong or sharp, which is what you want. Unless MiHoYo releases some new skins or alters Cheongyun's appearance in a certain way, I don't find Cheongyun to be that hot. I'm gonna go ahead and put him in the lukewarm tier. Next up is the edgelord himself, Diluc. This man has more edge to him than the sharpest ulu knife in the world. Diluc is so edgy that he makes a dragon scimitar look like a plastic knife. Diluc does splooge out some good hotness. It appears to me that Diluc's body is the embodiment of capsaicin. Every pore in this man's body is just ejaculating pungency into the environment around him. If you just look at Diluc's shoulders or his thighs, it's just producing so many photons. It's difficult to look at Diluc and not have dopamine just eviscerate your brain. I'm gonna go ahead and put Diluc into the Carolina Reaper tier. Diona is the next batter up to step up to the plate. I don't think spiciness applies here. I certainly wouldn't do any capsaicin analysis with this character. She just seems very wholesome. Diona is the first character to reach the Boku no Pico tier. Chunibio, the colloquial Japanese term typically used to describe early teens who have delusions of grandeur. If there's one thing that isn't delusional, it's Fischl's spiciness. She ranks pretty high on the Scoville scale. Fischl's kneecaps are quite aesthetically pleasing. The frontal belly of Fischl's epicranius muscle is so well placed by the gods of capsaicin themselves. Her frontalis muscle really complements her eyebrows and allows her forehead to wrinkle, so you know her features are genuine. Her figure is slender and wonderfully zygomatic. Fischl's skull is absolutely glamorous. Fischl's skull ranks high among all the mammalian species, so I'm gonna go ahead and put her into the Carolina Reaper tier. Ganyu, the physical embodiment of the word sizzling. Her capsaicin levels are off the fucking charts. Using the word pungency is an insult to Ganyu's hotness. I'm relatively sure that my retina sustained extreme damage when looking at Ganyu. The photons from Ganyu's titty milkers have evolved new wavelengths that scientists still have yet to discover. The electrical particles from Ganyu's massive dump truck unapologetically molested my photoreceptor proteins, and I've been on a high ever since. I'm actually quite concerned that my cerebrospinal fluid underwent some massive changes ever since looking at Ganyu. If Ganyu's hotness was converted to an earthquake, it would register as a 10.0 on the Richter scale. I no longer feel human after looking at Ganyu. Ganyu rises to the top of the tier list. Hu Tao is next, and she is a character that can output a decent amount of heat. She does have some nice facial symmetry. Her thigh gap does seem to be an adequate size. Looking at her spine, I would be remiss to not mention the axon terminals and the Fibonacci sequence of dendrites that are matched up well with her complexion. Her fingers do seem to be pretty arousing. I don't really have too many complaints about Hu Tao. I'm gonna go ahead and put her in the habanero tier. The descendant of the prestigious Gunhilder clan herself, Jean, the acting Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius, is capable of menstruating her hotness around the world. Like a ghost chili pepper, she packs quite a punch. After gazing upon Jean's beauty, my rough endoplasmic reticuli and associated ribosomal RNA shifted, and my mitochondria are now encoded in semen. Jean's nose is so sexy that I nearly had a stroke. I don't know who at MiHoYo decided to put yoga pants in a fucking game. I guess some men just want to watch the world ejaculate. Jean is a easily Carolina Reaper for me. It is with great chagrin that I announce that we're at Kukya. I'm going to save you the aneurysm and let you know that Kukya is one unseasoned motherfucker. Kukya's heat is so low it doesn't even register on the Scoville scale. His lanky shoulders and levator scapulae muscle is so ambiguously ugly, I think I'm a little bit depressed. Kukya's thighs are horrendous, and his hair looks like fermented diarrhea. Kukya is hands down one of the easiest characters to categorize. He will go swiftly into the visual myocardial infarction. Ka-ching, that's the sound of my testicles when I first laid upon this character. With magnificent cat ears, Ka-ching makes her ancestors of the family Felidae quite proud. Her high amount of Scoville is complemented by her efficient sodium, potassium, and chloride levels. One quick look at her radius and ulna can tell you everything that you need to know. The ethereal beauty of her pectoralis muscle is unfathomable. It's as if her eyebrows are extricated from heaven itself. It appears that Ka-ching's mammary glands are in excellent condition. Her lactiferous ducts are nothing to mess with. Ka-ching for me is easily 27 million degrees Fahrenheit. Klee is very wholesome indeed. I like her jacket, it's very crimson. She's just minding her own business, bokuing around and peekoing wherever she can. She has some bombs in her backpack that she just carries around, which is always a good thing to do. It looks like Klee is very good at cellular respiration. Klee slides into that Boku no Pico tier. Hold on to your testicles, cause this next character is about to blow your fucking mind, literally and figuratively. La Signora is the physical embodiment of an oven. Baked at 350 degrees, she is the creator of simps, destroyer of worlds. Rule 34 enthusiasts have never gone so hard since her first appearance. La Signora's fallopian tubes will strangle even the least horniest men on Earth. Her uteral presence is unrivaled on our planet. If you tried plotting La Signora's hips onto a graph in Excel, Excel would explode and commit suicide as to not disgrace La Signora's hips. The cuticles within each strand of her hair have transcended the observable universe. 27 million degrees Fahrenheit. Ara, are you cunts ready? Hold on to your testicles, cause you're about to go on a massive fucking ride. This diegetic description of Lisa might alter your semen levels. The isthmus of Lisa's fallopian tubes are so structurally pleasant, it makes the Fibonacci sequence look like a joke. Lisa's elbows are so attractive, it physically pains me to look at them. Lisa's hair shafts are incredibly beautiful. I suspect there are a lot of disulfide bonds within those hair follicles. Each lobe in her mammary gland is perfectly sized. I think if we transition as a species from drinking cow milk to Lisa milk, we would find drastic changes in our health. A lot of our problems would just evaporate out of thin air. Lisa fallopians her way to the top of the tier list. We have now arrived at Mona, a character that absolutely genocides the Scoville scale. A quick examination at her lower torso and lower abdomen will tell you all that you need. The viscosity of Mona's thighs is mathematically impossible to calculate. Mona's humerus is so sexy that it's manipulating my brain. The way Mona's humerus is able to rotate about its axis at the shoulder joint is downright fucking angelic. Looking at Mona is like dousing your eye sockets with acetone, where pain is pleasure. My retinas are pleased with the convex and concave nature of Mona's gooch. The curvaceous geometry of Mona's massive wagon is as beautiful as a prime number. Mona climbs the Tower of Spice quite easily to reach the top of the tier list. Luminae is up next, and I don't really say anything too special. The rods and cones in my eyes aren't really excited all too much. The pungency has gone AWOL here. It's like the developers just omitted the capsaicin levels within this character. If I had to compare female MC's hotness to a RuneScape skill, I would compare it to crafting. It's pretty mediocre. Luminae seems to be scoville bankrupt, and unfortunately, this is not a down payment that I want to embark on. I place Luminae into the lukewarm tier. Ninguang is next, and she absolutely doggy styles and barebacks the shit out of the scoville scale. Now, I'm not a fan of BDSM, and I don't think I ever will be, but if Ninguang were to protrude an act of dominance or submission towards me, I would not decline. Ninguang's posterior ligaments are provocative and alluring. A swift glance at her fibula will have you overflowing with spunk. If you measure the distance between her two eyes and her nose, it is a perfect equilateral triangle. The facial symmetry on this character is fucking nuts. Her capsaicin levels from her titties are able to bypass any lipid bilayer of molecules. Ninguang massages herself into the Carolina Reaper tier. Paimon, radically wholesome, nice and healthy, beneficial to the whole. Boku no Pico tier. Chi-Chi, nice pigment, very wholesome, economically viable, ergodynamic in nature, just extremely wholesome. Chi-Chi, wholesome, Boku no Pico tier. Razor, and I'm not talking about Gillette, this is a prison razor. Sharp, unseasoned, and absent of capsaicin. To say that Razor is an exemplary character of hotness is a logical fallacy. The amount of capsaicin revealed in the high-performance liquid chromatography test that I performed on Razor was extremely tiny. A jalapeno is hotter than Razor. Razor is like a vast dry soil, incapable of producing any moist succulent roots. I place Razor into the lukewarm tier. I regret to inform you that it's now Rosaria time. Rosaria absolutely circumcises the competition with her massive knockers. Just look at the distal end of her humerus in their upper arm and the proximal ends of the ulna and the radius in her forearm, and look me directly in the eyes and tell me that shit is not sexy. The very nanosecond that I saw Rosaria on my screen, my voltage-gated ion channel started cream pieing in excitement. Her pungency is fucking ginormous. She's like the Godzilla of pungency, the John Wick of Scoville units. Rosaria's mammary glands are exquisite, and frankly, downright illegal. People might say I'm a polyglot, able to speak and write in several different languages that can't be comprehended by normal people. But this next statement that I'm about to utter out of my mouth is completely devoid of irony. Rosaria's milkers are so superb that my mitochondria are jerking off as we speak. You thought mitochondria was the powerhouse of the cell? Wrong. They're the power jelkers of the cell. Rosaria swoops into that 27 million degrees Fahrenheit tier. It appears we have arrived at YouTube douchebag anime protagonist reincarnate. This worthless semen demon is none other than Scaradouche. This gizzard wizard doesn't even register on the Scoville scale. Not only is Scaradouche scoville bankrupt, he is intellectually bankrupt as well. He looks like an NTR bastard who preys on children and young impressionable minds to do giveaway scams, promising them V-Bucks, Fortnite skins, and Amazon gift cards. Scaradouche's clavicle is so fucking ugly that my neuron cells immediately underwent apoptosis. I think I lost a good 5 years of my life just looking at this gizzard wizard. I'm gonna swiftly dirty Sanchez Scaradouche into the visual myocardial infarction tier. Sucrose is next, and I think it's a good time to cool off some steam. Rosario was packing some major fucking schmeat. However, Sucrose has one flaccid appearance. I don't see any sort of capsaicin located within this character, and if there does exist some capsaicin, it is undetectable. This lack of prominence upon the Scoville scale is like getting yourself dirty Sanchez'd by an NTR ugly bastard. My neurons are crying with pain due to the lack of capsaicin produced by this character. Sucrose is going to make her way into the aesthetically displeasing tier. Next edger on the list is Child or Tartaglia. Child has a decent amount of pungency to him. If you were to stand in a room with him, you would definitely feel some radiation. But that dissipation of heat wouldn't be too massive. He does have quite a significant amount of capsaicin protruding out of his hair follicles. His pupils and retinas are relatively attractive. The brachial artery along his arm is aesthetically pleasing. I place child into the habanero tier. The animal god himself, Venti, is next. Now although his moans are god tier, I don't think he is quite the mogul in the capsaicin department. If you look at Venti's deep palmar arterial arch, or his cephalic vein, you maybe, just maybe get a semi-chode, but other than that, Venti really isn't too special. My cells aren't really rejoicing with glee when I look at Venti, and they're not exactly disappointed either. Venti's hotness is like the visual equivalent of a Blumpkin. It's not really ideal, but you'll take it anyway. Venti shall be input into the lukewarm tier. Xiang Ling is next, and she's very middling in terms of scoville units. I wouldn't exactly say she's ugly, but she's definitely not hot. Her capsaicin levels are passable, but definitely run-of-the-mill and so-so. Her femur is pretty average. It appears that her hair shafts have fewer disulfide bonds than normal. I place Xiang Ling into the lukewarm tier. Next up is the animal yaksha himself, Zhao. I haven't been able to measure too much capsaicin out of this individual. His spice is certainly unremarkable and at most modest. In terms of pungency, I don't really see too much happening here. Unlike a Carolina Reaper, Ghost Chili, or Habanero, Zhao's hotness seems to be more equivalent to horseradish or ginger. I place Zhao into the lukewarm tier. Shinku, another NTR ugly bastard. He is not as severe as other NTR ugly bastards, but based on his facial symmetry, hair follicles, and overall bone structure, I can say with near confidence, near perfect confidence, that my neurons are absolutely furious with me. But I will say that Shinku does have a nice tibia. Lucky for him, that is his saving grace. Shinku earns his spot into the aesthetically displeasing tier. Xin Yan follows after. Capsaicin levels are pretty low here. The Scoville scale is left intact. Although she has a pyro character, I don't really see a massive emission of heat out of this persona. Her pungency is quite mild. My somatosensory fibers within my mouth aren't really stimulated by this character. Xin Yan shall be placed in the lukewarm tier. Next up is Yao Yao, who is yet to be released by MiHoYo. But one quick glance already lets me know that she is very wholesome. In terms of wholesome meter, I think she ranks pretty high on there. Yao Yao joins the Boku no Pico tier. The final character in Genshin Impact is the Geo Archon, Zhongli. And boys, he packing some fucking schmeat. Zhongli has an extensive amount of capsaicin within him. His pungency is quite elite. It is with great honor that I can claim that the final character is capable of titillating my neurons in such a degree, so we can end on a high note. Zhongli's massive schmeat and attractiveness have collectively caused my spine to ejaculate so much cerebrospinal fluid within me. It is honestly really refreshing. Zhongli makes it to the Carolina Reaper tier. And that is the hottest Genshin Impact characters tier list.